Hi everyone, welcome back to another video, and if you are new here, hi, my name is Carmel, and on this channel we talk about all things makeup and beauty. And today we actually have episode 6 in my little series on the drugstore, where I go out and I test a bunch of drugstore products and bring to you what I think are good and not so good. And today is the turn of concealers. I've been out and tested 15 different drugstore concealers, and today I'm going to bring you those results. So if that's something that you think you might be interested in, please do keep on watching. All of these concealers were applied with the very same brush, and that's this one. This is the BK Beauty Angie Hot and Flashy A506. This is my absolute favorite concealer brush. However, if you are looking for an alternative, a more affordable option, I really love the Real Techniques concealer brush. The actual name has come off this, but I will link it down below and I'll pop it on the screen. This is another really good option. The second thing to note is that I tested these concealers with and without powder, and one eye was always set with powder and the other eye wasn't. And each concealer was set with the same powder, and it's this one, the Maybelline Fit Me Loose Finishing Powder. Being completely honest, my first choice would always be the Givenchy setting powder. But let's be honest, if I'm presenting you with drugstore concealers, it makes zero sense to set it with a high-end product. The third thing to note is that I prepped my eyes in exactly the same way, and I always use an eye serum, not a cream, a serum. I always prep with this. This is my favorite. It's quite inexpensive. It's the Beauty Pie triple hyaluronic acid. It just helps to hydrate and firm and plump my under eyes. And last but not least, and probably the most important point, in my opinion, an absolutely creaseless concealer does not exist unless you have completely line-free, crease-free under eyes. Please do bear that in mind. No concealer is perfect because we don't have perfect under eyes. Now, I do have problematic under eyes, so on the screen now you'll see my under eyes. Obviously, I have a lot of darkness, I have hollowness, and I have very, very thinning under eyes, particularly under my left eye. You can see I've got a lot of veins showing there because my under eyes have thinned so much, as I'm almost 42 now. No concealer will cover this completely, but some in this bunch do an absolutely brilliant job. So with that out of the way, let's just get into it. So I'm going to present these concealers to you in no particular order. I do have some that are favorites, but I'm going to break that down for you at the end of the video. So we're going to start, first of all, with the Wet n Wild Megalast Incognito Concealer. I have this in the shade Medium Neutral. So this concealer actually has a really flexible doe foot, and it really does help to get into especially the inner corner. So the Wet n Wild comes in 20 shades, and it's a medium to full coverage buildable matte finish concealer. It's infused with hydrating ingredients such as shea butter and licorice root extract. It gives a really nice natural finish despite being a high coverage concealer. It feels really lightweight. I find it to be very brightening. When I first applied this, I was pretty amazed at how it looked. As you'll be able to see from the footage, completely and utterly crease free. It looked absolutely flawless. So it looked fine whether I set it with powder or I didn't. And I did wear this on a few days, and honestly, it really disappointed me in the end, unfortunately, because it started out really well, but by the end of the day, my under eyes were completely creased. I think it's just because it is maybe a little bit too full coverage for me. So whether I set it or whether I didn't, the lines, the creasing was still there, unfortunately. So this is definitely a concealer that starts out great, but doesn't end very well, in my opinion. Next up, we have the Catrice True Skin Concealer. I absolutely love the foundation that matches with this concealer. And before we get into the footage, I just want to show you this doe foot because it's so unusual. Look at this. It is so bendy and it's so flexible. At first I thought, oh, is this going to get in the way of my application? But actually it just enables you to get right into the inner corner. And because I have really deep set eyes, this bendy doe foot is really, really helpful. The Catrice comes in 8 shades. It's a hydrating concealer with high coverage and a matte finish. It contains hyaluronic acid, which moisturizes for up to 18 hours, and it's waterproof, paraben and oil-free, and it's cruelty-free. Now, this concealer is super affordable. You can get it between £3 and £4 sterling. That is an absolute bargain. And one thing I will tell you about this concealer, which I went out of my way to check, was where it is made, and it's made in Italy. And you can tell that this concealer is made in Italy, just like the foundation. It is such high quality. There is absolutely nothing cheap about the performance of this concealer. I think the biggest thing to note is the serious lack of shades. I mean, it's pretty poor. So I would say that this concealer gives a really soft kind of satin bordering on matte finish. I think it gives an amazing amount of coverage. Now, it didn't cover all of my darkness, which is actually really hard to do, especially on my left eye, but it did a really good job. It feels lovely when you're applying this. It feels hydrating, it feels skin loving, and that's probably due to the ingredients, the hyaluronic acid that it contains. I do feel like it is a little bit better when I set it with powder. I think it just keeps everything in place, and I can tell you that I have absolute minimal creasing with this concealer. I think for mature under eyes, this is an absolutely phenomenal option. It's going to stay put. It's going to remain as creaseless as it can. An absolutely brilliant concealer. Catrice can do no wrong for me at the minute, honestly. Moving on now to a collection concealer. This is the Lasting Perfection Concealer. And again, a very, very affordable option. Only retails for about £4. The collection comes in 20 shades. It's a buildable medium to full coverage concealer. It has a matte finish, but provides 16 hours of wear and is also sweat proof. I would describe this as a very full coverage concealer, and you really do not need a lot of it, but for the price, it performs absolutely brilliantly. It's always been one of my favorites growing up. If you grew up in the UK, you will probably tried a collection concealer in your lifetime. I am very strategic when I apply this, just because it does dry down quite quickly, so you have to be careful where you apply it. You need to work quickly. Now, I've used this on and off for years, and what I have found is that it definitely performs well with powder, but I found that it creases less with a more finely milled powder. So it works fine with the Maybelline, but it performs brilliantly with the Givenchy, because the Givenchy is very finely milled. I found that I did get some creasing when I used the Maybelline. That's just something to note. But if you're looking for a full coverage, low maintenance concealer, the collection is an amazing option. We're moving on to some concealers from e.l.f. now. And we're going to start with the e.l.f. Hydrating Camo Concealer. This retails for about £7, comes in 25 shades. It provides a natural skin-like finish and is enriched with rose water to help soothe irritated skin. And it's a very, very full coverage concealer, and you really don't need a lot of this. This concealer, I find it to be a very thick consistency, a very thick formula. Despite what the name says, hydrating, I find it to be extremely drying on my under eyes, and it dries down so fast that it causes me anxiety. So it is a very, very full coverage concealer, and although it works well with powder, I would say with both of the e.l.f. concealers, you don't actually need powder with them because they are very, very self-setting. So that's one plus point, I guess. No matter how many times I've worn it, or whether I've worn it with powder, without powder, it always gets patchy. It starts off not looking great, but it ends up looking even less great. It becomes drier, patchier. It settles into every single fine line. My darkness did still show through in the daylight footage. Honestly, it makes me look a lot older than my 42 years. Just a disappointing one for me. I just don't love it. I really don't. And yeah, it wouldn't be one that I would recommend to you. Sorry, e.l.f. Next, we have the original e.l.f. Camo Concealer. It is a 16-hour concealer and also comes in 25 shades. It's full coverage with a matte finish. It provides up to 16 hours of wear and is enriched with avocado oil and helps to moisturize and protect. I have this in the shade medium beige, and again, this is a very full coverage concealer, so you really don't need a lot of it. It does dry down just as quick as the hydrating option. However, I like this a lot better than I like the hydrating concealer, which is so ridiculous, isn't it? You would think that I would prefer the hydrating one, but hey, there we go. Like with both of the e.l.f. ones, they do run a little bit warm, a little bit yellow for me, and I'm not a huge big fan of the doe foot either. But if you're looking for full coverage, if you want to cover darkness under your eyes, this is a really good option. As I said, with the hydrating version, they are quite self-setting, so you don't really need to use powder with these. And although I did find that it did settle into some fine lines, I thought it was fine. I think it's a fine concealer. I think it is more geared towards people with unproblematic under eyes. If you have a lot of wrinkles, if you have fine lines like I do, I think they are, this concealer is going to settle into them no matter how little you use. Despite it being full coverage, I did find it to be buildable. So if you do want to build it up, you can, although I don't think you really need to. If you want to try an e.l.f. concealer, definitely go for the original 16-hour Camo Concealer and not the hydrating one. All right, next up we have a concealer from Morphe, and this is the Morphe Filter Effect Concealer. I need to talk to you about this before we dive into any footage. I ordered most of these concealers online. All right, I do find drugstore concealers a little bit tricky when it comes to shades, but I think in general, I've done an all right job. I didn't do an all right job when I chose my shade for this. I got a medium neutral shade, which I thought would be perfect. I don't like getting a concealer that is too brightening, that's too light. This is straight up orange. Even with my tan, this is a disaster. So I just need you. I really need you to see past the shade on this one, because if you take my issue with the shade and the fact that it looks ridiculous, it's actually a really good concealer. The Morphe comes in 20 shades and it's a medium, lightweight, naturally radiant finish concealer. Retails for about £12. It's waterproof and it's oil and fragrance and paraben free, and is also infused with hyaluronic acid for hydration. So because I chose an absolutely ridiculous shade and because it's so orange, I had to set this with a lighter powder. So I had to set this one with my Givenchy. I couldn't go in with any other shade. It had to be a brightening powder. So that's why I'm using that in this video. Now this definitely gives a soft matte finish. I think if we look past the shade, it's a really good concealer. I was absolutely blown away at the lack of the settling into lines. I know it's hard to see past the orange, but it is absolutely beautiful. It feels hydrating. It just gives a really natural finish, but with a decent amount of coverage. And if I was to run out of concealer, which I don't think I'm going to, if I was to run out of concealer, I would definitely be tempted to pick one of these up. But I think for the sake of the review today, it's not really the fairest review because the shade was so off. I wasn't even going to include it, but it's in here because it actually performs so well with and without powder. So definitely one worth checking out, but do your research on the shades and don't end up like I did. Moving on to NYX now, and I reviewed 2 concealers from the brand. One I love and is already in my collection, but one that is new to me, and this is the NYX Can't Stop, Won't Stop Concealer. This retails for about £10, and this is a full coverage concealer. Again, I'm going to say I wasn't too impressed with the shades. I do feel like they do lean a little bit warm, a little bit orange for my liking. The NYX Can't Stop Concealer comes in 24 shades. It is a full coverage concealer, which is vegan, and it claims to be non-transfer and waterproof. Being honest, I found this formula to be quite heavy. And even when you put it on the back of your hand, it feels dry. It definitely feels a little bit almost powdery. It doesn't feel like a hydrating concealer, one that is going to work well with my under eyes. Now, I didn't mind it, it was fine, but I found that because it's a little bit of a drier formula, I had to spend a little bit more time blending it out. And now, despite it being full coverage, I didn't feel like it did cover all my darkness. I did see my darkness still peeking through there, but I felt like it did look well in daylight, and it worked well with or without powder. Honestly, I'm a little bit underwhelmed with it. I don't hate it, but I don't love it. It's fine. I just don't really have a strong opinion on this. It's just fine. I can imagine that some people, this could be a real holy grail because it has high coverage. But for me, there's nothing remarkable about it. It's just a fine concealer, pretty basic for the price. Moving on to the NYX Bear With Me Serum Concealer. This is an absolute favourite of mine. It's a little bit more expensive, retails for about £12 to £13, but I think it's worth every single penny. So this is definitely a medium to full coverage, and unlike the Can't Stop, Won't Stop, I find the shades much better. Comes in 17 shades. It's infused with tremolo mushroom and green tea for up to 24 hours of hydration, and it gives a medium lightweight coverage. This was actually the first kind of skincare concealer product that NYX have produced, and it's a phenomenal product. Probably one of the best drugstore concealers that you can find. It can give you a high level of coverage, but at the same time, it feels very, very hydrating. You don't need a lot of this. It's a really confusing formula actually, because it doesn't feel skincare-like, it doesn't feel serumy, but it definitely feels hydrating whilst giving you a good amount of coverage. And I don't find that I get much creasing at all with this. I might get a little bit of settling into lines over the course of a very long day, but it is very, very minimal. This is a concealer that you could actually use all over the face, and I've read that people do use this as a foundation. I mean, it's a pretty expensive foundation because it's very small, but it is very, very beautiful. And for mature under eyes, for eyes that have darkness or fine lines, I think this is an amazing option. The only thing that I do not like about this concealer is the pump, but I guess this way is a little bit more hygienic. I feel like I can't control the amount that comes out, so I find that I get a lot of wastage with this concealer, which is a shame, but if you can get past that, a absolutely brilliant and beautiful concealer. Next up, we have a concealer from Essence, and this is the Essence Multitask Concealer. I am going to be 100% honest with you now before we get into it, and I'm a little bit disappointed with myself because this had been sat in my drawer for the last 7 months because I judged it before I even tried it. I thought it was going to be rubbish. I don't know whether it's the packaging, the applicator. When I opened it and I tested it on my hand, it felt really thick, and I thought there's no way this is going to look nice on my under eyes. I was wrong. So I have this in the shade Natural Beige. The Essence only comes in 7 shades. It comes in the form of a practical stick and provides a natural matte finish with a medium to high coverage. It's infused with hyaluronic acid, it's alcohol-free, fragrance-free, and paraben-free. I'm not the biggest fan of the applicator. I don't like dispensing products like that because, again, I end up applying too much, and as I'm applying it in the footage, I do have to wipe some away as I'm going along. But actually, it's an absolute dream, this concealer. Such a shock and a surprise to me. It blends out beautifully. It gives a high level of coverage. This concealer creases the least amount of any single concealer that I've gone through or will go through today. The lack of creasing actually blew my mind even 11 hours in. Still no settling, still no creasing. I did see at the end of the day maybe a little bit of darkness peeking through. Just to reiterate, I don't like the twisty, action. I find that everything gets a little bit messy, but that's me nitpicking because I have to find some negative. No emphasizing of lines. This is a real dark horse. And can someone tell me why nobody's talking about this? Why is no one talking about this? The same with Catrice, the shade range isn't great, which is a real shame because this concealer is absolutely brilliant. Moving on now to Revlon, and I picked up the Revlon Colorstay Concealer. Now, I know Revlon have newer concealers out, but this one had amazing reviews. The reviews were right. I got this off Amazon. I love this concealer. This is one of my all-time favorite concealers and only £5. I have this in the shade light medium, which is absolutely perfect. The Revlon Colorstay comes in 18 shades and it is a full coverage concealer that claims to be undetectable. It's extremely lightweight, which covers without caking, clumping or flaking and provides up to 24 hours of wear. This concealer is so creamy, it's so hydrating, it feels beautiful to apply. I don't think I could come up with many negatives for this. It's very buildable, so it is a full coverage concealer, but it doesn't feel like a full coverage concealer. So it's what I have on today. I actually have a mix of two concealers on today. One is this Revlon. Even after a few hours, it still looks flawless. The creasing just doesn't exist. I don't know why this isn't more popular. Is it really old? It might be really, really old. I just picked the one that was available to me. Amazing concealer and one of my top picks of the whole bunch. And again, it has that really, really tiny little doe foot, which allows you to get into the corner of your eye, which is amazing for those of us with deep set eyes. Amazing concealer from Revlon. So as I said, I have two concealers on today. One is the Revlon Colorstay and the other one is this one. And this is the Rimmel Multitasker Concealer. Very similar name to the Essence, so don't get them confused. I have this in the shade Light Honey. The Rimmel Multitasker is available in 14 shades. It's a full coverage concealer, which is buildable and it corrects, brightens and hydrates. It's extremely lightweight, it's waterproof and delivers up to 24 hours of wear. I have been blown away by this concealer and I don't even think it's that popular. So it's definitely a full coverage concealer, but it's full coverage but feels extremely lightweight, very much like the NYX, but definitely feels more hydrating than the NYX Bear With Me Serum Concealer. It looks amazing with powder, but it looks amazing without powder. I feel like this looks pretty flawless on the under eyes. It does an amazing job at covering darkness, but still remaining hydrating and not getting cakey, not creasing and not feeling dry. It's an absolute pleasure to use this concealer. The only thing that I don't like about it is the huge doe foot. Again, a little bit like the e.l.f. ones. Don't need a doe foot that big. I don't know about you, but I love the precise little doe foots that allow me to get into places that I need to. That is just a bit unnecessary for me. The shade range is a little bit limited. I found a bigger shade range on Amazon than I did on the actual Rimmel website. So that's just something to bear in mind. But definitely a very high coverage concealer with a very hydrating feel. Next, we're going to move on to two concealers from Maybelline. And the first one is the Maybelline Fit Me Concealer. I have this in the shade 20, which is Sand. The Maybelline Fit Me comes in around 11 shades. It's a medium buildable coverage with a natural skin-like finish. It is oil-free and non-comedogenic. It's also fragrance-free, and it's also formulated to match all skin tones. Just to draw your attention to the doe foot, it's perfect. It feels like a really dainty concealer. Tiny, slimline packaging, super little doe foot, which I think is perfect for around the eye area. I had genuinely forgotten how brilliant this concealer is. And I would say that this gives a good medium coverage that is buildable. And I would also describe this as a luminous concealer. So luminous concealers, you're either going to take them or you're going to leave them. If you have very hollow under eyes, I think luminous concealers are tricky, because if you have hollow under eyes, if you have eye bags, then this concealer is probably going to emphasize them if you do not set them. I definitely get a great level of coverage from this concealer, but I do definitely recommend setting it with powder, because if you look at even the daytime footage, you can see there the hollow on my under eye, the reflection from the hollow, but on the powdered side, it looks amazing. I think this is an absolutely beautiful concealer because it's radiant, it's luminous, but it feels very nourishing on the under eyes. Like I said, I really genuinely forgot how great this concealer is. It's definitely, I would say, for those lighter days. It's not going to give you a ton of coverage, but what you can guarantee from this concealer is that it's not going to be drying and it's never going to look cakey. Next from Maybelline, we have the Instant Age Rewind Concealer. I think this retails for about £10. Now, I have this in the shade 130. I did get this when I was abroad, so it might be different where you are. I know Maybelline tried to trick me with their shade names. They're usually called something different over this side of the world than over in America. The Maybelline Instant Age Rewind is available in 13 shades, and this is probably the most iconic concealer. It's very multi-use and has a light to medium coverage. It claims to be crease resistant, and it also moisturizes for up to 12 hours. It's also formulated with goji berries, and it has an antimicrobial cushion tip applicator. I used to wear this non-stop. It's an unusual concealer. It's not like a traditional concealer because it gives a very lightweight coverage that can be built up. Honestly, I don't think you could build this up too much, to be honest with you, because it is so lightweight. I think this does a fine job at giving you lightweight coverage for those no makeup days. If you're in a rush, this is the concealer that you want to reach for, because you can go as liberally as you like and it's never going to look dry and it's never going to look cakey. It used to do a pretty good job at covering my darkness. Now, not so much. Even looking at my eyes now to how they looked 2 years ago, my eyes are a lot thinner and a lot darker now, so it takes a lot more to cover them. This is okay. I have lots of these lying around for some reason. Now, it comes with this sponge applicator, and I've moaned about this before and people have said, well, just wash it. But actually, on the Maybelline website, it tells you not to wash it. It tells you not to wet it, but I'm just not a big fan. I would use this happily all over my face. Would I say to you it's the best concealer in the world? No, it's not. It's just fine. If you're just looking for a light coverage concealer that you don't have to mess around with and you don't have to spend ages blending, this could be the one for you. It's nice. I would say though, do set it, because if you don't, it can tend to sit into some of those fine lines. Okay, we're nearly there. We are finishing off with two concealers from L'Oreal. The first one is the L'Oreal Infallible More Than Concealer, and I have this in the shade Cashew. The L'Oreal Infallible is available in 17 shades. It is a full coverage, high pigment formula. It's enriched with vitamin C and it provides up to 24 hours of wear. This has a very, very big doe foot, and as you can see there, it just gets so messy. This is a very, very full, high coverage concealer, and that means that you do not need a lot of this. You need to be really strategic in your placement of this, because if you go too handy, it's going to get really wrong really fast. If I use a minimal amount, then it's a really lovely concealer. Probably along with the e.l.f. the highest coverage of the bunch of these concealers. I think it does a really good job at covering darkness. It would probably do a better job if I had a really good shade. Maybe I'm just really bad at choosing shades. Am I really bad? I think sometimes the information out there is very minimal when it comes to drugstore shades. Anyway, so I find that if I use a minimal amount and I don't bring the concealer up right underneath my eyes, then the concealer will look lovely and it will not crease on me. Again, if you go too heavy-handed, it could turn out messy. I really don't feel like you need to use powder with this. It works fine with powder. It works better without because it's very, very self-setting. If you're on the hunt for a very full coverage concealer, I think out of the bunch, I would advise this one. Although it's full coverage, although there is that risk that it's going to settle into the fine lines, I think it's the best out of all the super full coverage options that I've presented to you today. So it's definitely better than the NYX Can't Stop, Won't Stop, and definitely better than the e.l.f. options too. I don't find it to be hydrating, but I think there's a time and a place for it. It is a really nice concealer, but do go handy with it. Last but not least, from L'Oreal, this is the L'Oreal True Match Radiant Serum Concealer. And I have this in the shade 5D, which is a medium shade. This is the most doe foot looking applicator I've ever seen. I absolutely love that it's flat on one side. It actually really allows you to get into your under eye hollows, which is quite unusual. It's quite a unique doe foot, but it definitely helps to get into those under eye hollows. The L'Oreal Serum Concealer is available in 24 shades. It has a medium coverage, a radiant finish, which contains caffeine to help depuff the under eyes. It provides 24 hours of hydration, is fragrance-free, paraben-free, non-comedogenic, and vegan. I think this is a dreamy concealer, but again, as with the Maybelline Fit Me Concealer, I find that it's quite luminous. I find that it's quite lightweight. Although I think it gives a medium coverage and I do think it's buildable, it does have a luminosity and a radiance to it. So I think, as I said before, you either love concealers like that or you hate them. If you like hydration and luminosity under your eyes, you're going to love this. I would reiterate what I said about the Maybelline Fit Me. If you are going to wear this, I would definitely suggest, if you have under eye hollows, if you don't, I don't think you need to worry, but if you have eye bags, under eye hollows, I do think you need to set this concealer, because if you don't, then the reflection of the concealer is just going to emphasize those bags. It's going to emphasize those hollows. This for me is an incredible everyday concealer. Despite my dark under eyes, I'm not always looking for serious high coverage. Sometimes I just want a little bit of something under my eyes to neutralize that darkness a bit, you know, especially on those no makeup or low makeup days. And this is perfect for that. This is probably the best hydrating and nourishing drugstore concealer that I've tried, and absolutely wonderful for people with more mature under eyes. So we're at the end of the video, and honestly, it's really hard for me to pick a favorite because I think each concealer does a different job. So basically, I broke it down into categories. So if your biggest issue is creasing under the eyes, the main recommendations from me would be, number one, the Essence Zero Creasing, in my opinion. Really phenomenal performance. The Revlon, the Catrice, and the Rimmel Multitasker, all really good concealers which give you good coverage but very, very minimal creasing. If I was to recommend the best concealers for coverage, for covering darkness, I would say number one, the L'Oreal Infallible, the e.l.f. Camo Concealer, the original, and also the NYX Bear With Me Serum Concealer, because even though it's a serum concealer, it does give an amazing amount of coverage. If you're looking for hydration and luminosity, it really is a no-brainer. The Maybelline Fit Me Concealer, the L'Oreal Serum Concealer, absolutely fantastic. My best overall for all of these, I think, would probably be a toss-up between the Revlon. I think it's brilliant and so underrated. I absolutely love the NYX Bear With Me Serum Concealer. Nothing has changed there. I really love the Rimmel Multitasker. I love the Essence Multitask Stick. And I love the Maybelline Fit Me. All really good all-round concealers that tick many, many boxes. If you have some drugstore recommendations for great concealers, please do drop them in the comments below, because it's so helpful for everybody to hear what your recommendations are, because just because something works for me doesn't mean it will work for you. Let's share those recommendations down in the comments. Thank you so much for joining me for this video. If you haven't subscribed yet, I would love it if you would consider doing so, because I would love to have you here. I am really looking forward to seeing you in the next video, but until then, take care and bye for now.